Greetings, everyone. This is Peter Duveen again, and I'm continuing my series on, you could say it's a series on backgrounds used by different newscasters or commentators in the mass media and also in the alternative media. We see so many videos, and generally they have some background, and I think one of the fitting backgrounds that I have seen are sets of books or bookshelves or something like that that shows that the people are, I would say, well read, and that they want to give others the impression that they are well read. Today, well, what I've been trying to do, there are various themes. Of course, there's the theme I just mentioned, but one of the themes of my series is the recovery of books that have been basically thrown away. And I have been very fortunate to have been living in an area where there are several recycling centers, and where, at least for a time, people were permitted to pick books out of the dump, you might call it, books from the dump. Instead of going to a fashionable bookstore with nice glossy covers and shiny pages, I preferred to go to the dump for my much of my book shopping. And one day I noticed that this particular volume was sitting on top of the book pile. This is the Boston Cooking School cookbook, a very famous cookbook, but also known as the Fannie Farmer cookbook, after Fannie Merritt Farmer, who wrote the book. And this is like the definitive volume for cooking. The first edition, I believe, was published in the late 1890s. Let me see if I can find it. It says 1896. This is not the 1896 edition, and you can get modern editions of this book, which I'm not particularly impressed with the modern editions, particularly since in my family there was an earlier edition that was circulating, probably something from the 1920s. But this marvelous volume that I found at the top of a heap of books is the 1936 edition, I believe, or maybe it is the 1937. Let's see. Well, it could have been 37, 36. Okay, 36 or 37, either way. This is a marvelous cookbook, and I use it whenever I want to cook something, which is not that frequently, but what I like about this is that the book itself, although there are some smudges here and there, which might bother some people, the book is basically in new condition. Just looking through the pages, it's just marvelous to see the very pristine condition of these pages. I almost think that nobody had, whoever had this volume didn't use it very often. Well, what can I say? Yes, it's just in marvelous condition. And it's like getting a new book. It's an artifact from the 1930s. Here it is. And certainly I would much rather own this copy than one of the new copies where the pages are covered or with some kind of glossy material that makes the books these days very heavy and almost crass. I'm not really particularly impressed with the way books are produced today. So I just wanted to say what a wonderful gift it is to be able to get something like this from the recycling center. And truly, an artifact from the past. And speaking of the past and artifacts and cooking, another volume that I had obtained not from the dump, but from, let's see where this was. This I probably got in the 1990s, a book called Coffee and Waffles by Alice Foote McDougall. Alice Foote McDougall founded a chain of restaurants in the I guess in the 1920s basically. And in 1926 she wrote this wonderful volume, Coffee and Waffles. And what's interesting about this book is that interspiced with all of the recipes and the not just recipes, but she also kind of lays out how something should be prepared and displayed and what should be served with what. She definitely promotes her own personal philosophy, not as a matter of trying to impose a philosophy on others, but really trying to give the preparation of food a context. For instance, she says, Emerson says we must see life simple and see it whole. That is just it. Simple perfection, the wholeness that admits of no ragged edges in thought, speech, or act, that brings calm above the tempests of the day, and consecration to the smallest daily task. This sort of thing, which is always of interest. And she also goes through some of her philosophy. At age 40, she became a single mother, had to develop a business, started coffee roasting, had a coffee tasting center in Grand Central Station. I believe that's where it was. And then finally opened restaurants and developed them. She did fall into bankruptcy during the Great Depression, but she lived through that depression and died in 1945. So these are two really interesting books. As I said, the Boston Cooking School Cookbook and Coffee and Waffles, two true classics. I just wanted to share these two wonderful volumes from my library with you. Thank you very much for listening.